Okay, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into something really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
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 Why some couples are like ditching. I don't know, in 2024, we've got an article that breaks down all the trends
Okay.
and even some snippets from a book that has like a whole different take on it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So today's mission is to figure out what's really going on
Okay.
and what it means for all of us in our relationships these days.
Well, the thing is, I think it's not necessarily that people are just like afraid of commitment.
Right.
It's more like the whole idea of commitment
Yeah.
is changing.
So it's like redefining it
Yeah, yeah.
instead of like getting rid of it.
Totally.
The article talks about how marriage isn't seen as the only way
Right.
to have a serious relationship anymore.
Yeah.
Like living together or being in a long-term partnership
Mhm.
without the legal stuff,
Uh-huh.
even having these personalized agreements,
Yeah.
it's all becoming pretty normal.
Yeah, seen that.
Have you seen that happening around you at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Lots of people doing their own thing and
Yeah.
making their own rules. It's kind of cool.
What do you think about those alternatives?
Well, I think it really challenges us to think about
Yeah.
we consider a serious relationship.
Huh.
Is it a piece of paper?
Right.
Is it shared finances?
Ah.
Or is it something else entirely?
Well, speaking of finances,
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about how ridiculously expensive weddings are.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The article said the average cost is now in the tens of thousands of dollars,
Wow.
which is insane.
Oh.
Then you add on top of that all the financial stuff that comes with being married,
Yeah.
like joint debt and shared responsibility.
Yeah.
And it can be really scary for people,
Yeah,
especially with the economy the way it is in 2024.
absolutely. People want to feel secure.
Right.
They want to know that they're on solid ground
Hmm.
before they make those big commitments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw a stat that totally blew my mind.
Okay.
Apparently, almost 4 million married adults in the U.S. live apart.
What? Really?
I know.
Wow.
It made me wonder if the pressure to combine finances and live together
Yeah.
is fading even within a marriage.
I think you're right. It really points to this whole
Yeah.
idea of individualism that we're seeing more and more these days.
Mhm.
People wanting to hold on to their own, identity,
Right,
their
yeah.
own space. And I think that can clash with
Yeah.
traditional ideas about marriage, at least for some.
Yeah, it's like maybe people worry about losing themselves,
Right.
the couple identity.
Yeah,
And the article also tied this to the changes in gender roles, too.
of course.
Those traditional ideas of what husbands and wives are supposed to be like
Right.
just don't really fit with how a lot of couples live now.
Definitely not.
Right.
Times have changed. And I think couples today want a partnership that feels
Yeah.
equal. So the question is, does traditional marriage, with all its
Yeah.
history and expectations, really allow for that?
Right.
Does it let both partners really go after their own goals while still building a life together?
That's a really good question. And of course, we can't forget about divorce,
Oh, right.
the
Yeah.
big D word.
The elephant in the room.
The article talked about how high divorce rates can make marriage seem risky,
For sure.
especially when you're already nervous about combining your finances and legal stuff.
I think it's not even just the thought of getting divorced,
Right.
but it's also the fallout if it happens.
Yeah,
The emotional side of things, but also the financial impact.
totally.
Remember those concerns we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
It all kind of feeds into it.
Yeah, it's like this chain reaction.
Yeah.
First, you're worried about finances.
Yeah.
Then you start to doubt marriage. Then you add in the possibility of divorce. And it's just a lot.
It's a lot to process.
No wonder people are exploring other options.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, have you noticed how popular things like
Oh, yeah.
domestic partnerships and civil unions are becoming?
For sure.
They kind of give you some of the legal benefits of marriage,
Yeah.
but without actually, getting married.
Yeah, it's like they're creating a structure that works for them, their own values and needs.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a choose your own adventure,
For commitment.
Terry.
Yeah.
Do you think those options make traditional marriage less appealing?
Mhm.
Or do they just give people more choices about how to define their relationships?
It's interesting because even in this book
Okay.
it was written by someone who's a big believer in marriage.
Okay.
They actually admit that unmarried couples can have pretty much every element of a
Yeah.
relationship
Mhm.
except for that lifetime commitment part.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like the lines are
Yeah.
getting blurred a bit.
Yeah, the line
Yeah.
is definitely getting blurry.
A little.
The article even talked about how media and influencers are playing a role
Oh, yeah, for sure.
in normalizing all these different ways of being in relationships.
Right.
So what used to be seen as unusual is now becoming totally normal.
It's true.
And it makes choosing not to get married feel less like a big deal.
Yeah, I think it takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
People can just do what feels right for them.
It really feels like the whole vibe around marriage is changing.
Mhm.
Instead of feeling like it's a requirement for being happy,
Yeah.
it's becoming just one option out of many.
Yeah, one path among many.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a really fascinating shift. It's like people are moving away from that married equals happiness
Yeah.
idea
Right.
and starting to focus more on like genuine connection and
Yeah.
shared values.
Okay.
It was like they're saying, hey, happiness isn't about checking this box.
Right.
It's about finding what truly works for us.
So it's less about fitting into a mold
Oh.
and more about figuring out what actually works for you and your partner,
Exactly.
regardless of what everyone else is doing.
Exactly. And that might mean marriage for some people.
Yeah.
But for others, it might mean something completely different.
And that's okay.
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of it. We're starting to see more acceptance
Yeah.
of all these different paths, There's less judgment around not being married, and people feel more empowered to make choices that align with their own values and desires. What do you think?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It feels like we're moving towards a more understanding
Yeah.
and compassionate view of relationships. Love and commitment can be expressed
Right.
in so many different ways.
Absolutely. It's like we're expanding the definition of what a successful relationship can look like. It's not
Exactly.
about saying tradition is bad,
Right.
but recognizing that there's no one right way to do love and commitment.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Every relationship is unique.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is that it brings joy
Yeah.
and a sense of connection to the people in it.
Couldn't agree more.
So wrapping up this deep dive,
Okay.
where do we go from here?
Ooh, big question.
I know. What does the future hold for love and relationships?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I know.
It's tough to predict the future,
Yeah.
but maybe instead of trying to figure out what's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
we should ask ourselves how we can build a society that supports all these different relationship choices
Right.
while still honoring love, commitment, and respect. What do you think?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about saying one model is better than another.
Right.
It's about creating understanding and space
Yeah.
for different ways of building meaningful relationships.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, whether you choose to get married or not, the foundation of any strong relationship is communication,
Yeah.
empathy, and working together.
And that's something we can all agree on.
I think so too. Yeah, it feels like people are really starting to prioritize like the quality of the connection over just the label,
Yeah,
you know?
totally. And that actually goes back to what that book was saying
Oh, right.
about building relationships that truly work, no matter what you call them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's less about fitting into a mold and more about just like figuring out what actually works for you
Yeah.
and your partner.
Yeah.
But you know what else the article brought up that I thought was really interesting?
What's that?
Technology.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have apps for everything these days,
Yeah, we do.
from managing finances together to like creating digital contracts.
Right.
Does that kind of make some of the traditional reasons for getting married,
Mm-hmm.
like needing joint bank accounts or legal protection, less important?
It's a really good point. I think technology is giving couples
Yeah.
more control and transparency in their relationships,
Okay.
whether they're married or not. And it could be playing into that whole individualism thing we were talking about,
Right.
Technology empowers people to like tailor their relationships to fit their needs
Yeah.
without having to follow the traditional marriage model.
It's almost like technology is giving us the tools
Yeah.
to kind of build our own relationship structures
Right.
instead of just relying on that prefab model of marriage.
Exactly.
It's pretty wild.
It is.
But before we go too far down the technology rabbit hole,
Okay.
remember that book we were talking about?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The one about the sanctity of marriage?
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to a totally different viewpoint.
It does, doesn't it?
You know, for people who believe in that marriage is way more than just a legal or social contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sacred covenant a spiritual bond.
Right. It's about something deeper,
Yeah.
you know?
It goes beyond all the practical stuff we've been talking about. It's important to acknowledge that, especially since we're trying to see the whole picture,
Mm-hmm.
for some people, the reason they get married is deeply rooted in their faith and tradition.
For sure.
And that's something that's really important to them.
Right. It reminds us that it's not just about individual choice.
Right.
It's about how our choices fit into these larger cultural and religious beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that have shaped the idea of marriage for centuries, really?
Yeah.
Does that make you think about like how all these different views on marriage can exist together
Right.
in a society that's becoming more and more secular?
Totally. It adds another layer of complexity.
It does.
It's like we're trying to navigate this world where what people want and what society expects are constantly bumping up against each other.
Right, exactly.
But even with all these different perspectives, I keep coming back to this question.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for the future of marriage? Is it changing? Is it disappearing?
Yeah.
Or is it something in between?
Yeah. Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think anybody really knows for sure.
Yeah.
But maybe instead of trying to predict what's going to happen, we should be thinking about how we can create a society that supports all these different relationship choices, whether people choose to get married or not, while still upholding those core values of love, commitment, and respect.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about saying one way is right and one way is wrong.
Right.
It's about fostering understanding and creating space for people to build relationships that are meaningful to them.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's been amazing talking about this with you.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation.
It really has. So much to think about.
Yeah, so much to think about. And remember, this conversation doesn't end here.
Yeah.
We encourage you to keep thinking about these ideas,
Yeah.
to talk to your friends and family about it, and to check out the sources we've been talking about. You can find links to them in the show notes.
Perfect. And if you feel like sharing your own thoughts and experiences, we'd love to hear them.
Definitely.
Join the conversation online
Yeah.
using the hashtag Deep Dive Marriage.
Yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
Exactly. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep creating relationships that bring you joy.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about how, for the longest time, marriage was like the path to happiness.
Yeah.
At least that's what we were told.
It was the goal, right?
Yeah.
The happy ending.
Yeah.
But now couples are starting to question that, which is pretty cool, I think.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it shows that people are realizing that happiness isn't about just fitting into a mold.
Right.
It's about finding what truly feels right for you and your partner,
Yeah.
regardless of what society says.
So it's less about following a script and more about writing your own love story.
Yeah.
And that story might include marriage, but it also might not.
Right. And the best part is I think we're seeing more acceptance of those different paths now.
Yeah, totally.
There's less stigma around not being married.
Right.
And people feel more empowered to make choices that feel right for them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. It feels like we're moving towards a more inclusive and compassionate way of looking at relationships. Like love and commitment can be expressed in so many different ways.
Absolutely. It's like we're broadening our understanding of what a successful relationship can be.
It's not about getting rid of tradition.
Right.
It's about recognizing that there isn't just one right way to do love and commitment.
It's about recognizing that every relationship is different.
Yeah.
What matters most is that it brings joy and connection to the people who are in it.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, where do we go from here? What does the future hold for love and relationships?
Well, I think the most important thing is to keep talking about it. To be open to different perspectives, to challenge our assumptions, and to create a space where everyone feels like they can share their experiences and be heard.
I love that. It's been incredible exploring all of this with you.
Me too. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation.